When you live to please others, you slowly begin to disappear. You shape your words to keep the peace, you silence your feelings to avoid conflict, and you start living by the expectations of others instead of the truth of your own heart. At first it feels noble, even loving, to make everyone happy. But over time, you realize that pleasing people doesn't create connection, it creates control. The more you try to please, the more you teach people that your needs don't matter. You begin to live in a cycle where their comfort becomes your prison. The truth is, pleasing others often comes from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being unloved, fear of being seen as too much. You believe that if you give enough, sacrifice enough, or adjust yourself enough, people will stay. But real love doesn't require shrinking. Real love allows you to be seen fully, even when you're not convenient. Respect begins the moment you stop begging for approval and start standing for your worth. It's not about being harsh or distant, it's about choosing honesty over fear. When you respect yourself, your energy changes. You stop explaining your value to people who refuse to see it. You stop chasing validation from those who only notice you when you're serving them. Respect is quiet but powerful. It doesn't need to prove itself. It shows up in your choices, your boundaries, and your ability to walk away from what hurts your soul. Every time you say no to something that disrespects your peace, you are saying yes to your growth. Self-respect teaches others how to treat you. People learn from your silence, your reactions, and your boundaries. When you constantly say yes to things that drain you, they assume your energy is endless. But when you begin to value yourself enough to say no, they start seeing your worth. The right people will adjust, the wrong ones will leave, and that's okay. Respect filters out what was never real. To stop pleasing is to reclaim your power. It is to remember that your worth isn't dependent on how useful you are to others. You are not here to be liked, you are here to live truthfully. You can still be kind, compassionate, and generous without being a doormat. Kindness without boundaries leads to exhaustion, but kindness with self-respect leads to peace. When you choose self-respect, your world changes. The conversations you tolerate change. The people you attract change. Even the way you speak to yourself changes. You stop apologizing for having standards, and you start walking with quiet confidence. You no longer need to explain your decisions because they come from clarity, not guilt. The most powerful love you can offer anyone begins with the love you give yourself. When you stop pleasing and start respecting yourself, you stop chasing temporary approval and start building permanent peace. You stop living for others and start living in alignment with your truth. That's when you finally meet the version of yourself that was waiting to be free. When you spend your life trying to please everyone, you slowly forget who you are. You start living by other people's expectations, molding yourself into whatever keeps the peace, and losing your own identity in the process. It might seem kind to always say yes, to always show up, to always give more than you receive. But deep down you know that it's not kindness, it's fear. The fear of being rejected, the fear of not being loved, the fear of disappointing someone who was never meant to own your happiness. You start believing that your worth depends on how much you can give, how much you can endure, and how much you can sacrifice for others. But no matter how much you give, it's never enough for those who are used to taking. The truth is, pleasing others doesn't make them love you more, it only makes them respect you less. People value what has boundaries. When you have no limits, you teach others that your time, your emotions, and your presence can be taken without gratitude. You start living in emotional debt, always paying for affection that should have been free. Respect is not something you demand from others, it's something you first give to yourself. When you start respecting yourself, you naturally attract relationships that honor that respect. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, and think differently. You no longer chase approval because you understand that your peace is more valuable than someone's temporary comfort. Respecting yourself means learning to say no without guilt. It means choosing truth over convenience, even when it makes others uncomfortable. It means recognizing that your energy is precious and not everyone deserves access to it. You start protecting your space not because you are selfish, but because you finally understand that peace is sacred. When you stop pleasing, you start creating space for real love, the kind that doesn't need you to shrink or pretend, the kind that celebrates you as you are. People will test your boundaries. They will call you selfish when you stop being their emotional caretaker. But that's only because they benefited from your silence. The moment you begin to speak your truth, the dynamic shifts. You stop attracting people who only love you for your compliance and start attracting those who love you for your strength. Respect transforms relationships. It shows who was there for control and who was there for connection. When you stop living for others, you start living for yourself. You rediscover your passions, your voice, and your purpose. You begin to understand that you were never meant to please the world, you were meant to live authentically. True peace comes when you no longer seek to be liked, but to be aligned with your values, your purpose, and your truth. Respect yourself enough to walk away from anything that demands you to betray your peace. The moment you stop pleasing and start respecting yourself, you stop surviving for approval and start living in power. Silence is not emptiness, it is awareness in its purest form. When you stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to listen, you begin to understand the quiet power of presence. There comes a moment in life when you realize that words no longer change anything. You've explained your intentions, defended your actions, and poured your heart into conversations that led nowhere. That is the moment when silence becomes your answer. Silence doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've grown beyond the need to prove your worth. It's the space where your energy speaks louder than your voice ever could. When you stop feeding someone's ego with your attention, they begin to feel the void your silence creates. They notice the absence of your energy, the peace that used to surround them when you were near. Suddenly, the things they ignored start to matter. The way you cared, the patience you showed, the comfort you provided. Silence has a way of awakening realization in others. It's in your distance that they start to see what your presence truly meant. Words can be ignored, but silence cannot. It lingers. It echoes. It forces people to face themselves without the distraction of your effort. Silence is a mirror. It reflects truth. When you stop responding to drama, manipulation, or disrespect, you stop feeding cycles that only drain your peace. You begin to protect your inner energy instead of constantly defending it. That shift in energy changes everything. The same people who once overlooked your worth will begin to wonder why your voice is no longer available to them. They'll realize that your silence isn't punishment, it's peace. And peace has a weight that no argument can match. There's wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Silence doesn't mean weakness, it means strength in restraint. It means you value your inner calm more than the need to be right. It means you understand that not every battle deserves your voice, and not every situation requires your energy. The moment you stop explaining your value to those committed to misunderstanding it, you reclaim your power. You realize that your time and words are sacred gifts, not tools of persuasion. When you learn to rest in silence, you start to hear your own truth more clearly. You begin to feel your emotions instead of reacting to them. You start to understand what truly matters and who truly deserves your presence. And when your silence comes from clarity, it no longer feels like distance, it feels like protection. In the end, silence is the language of strength. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't explain. It simply is. The ones who were meant to understand it will feel its message without a word. The rest will fade away, leaving you with peace as your only response. Because when you master silence, you no longer need to prove your worth. Your energy speaks for you, and that's when your true value finally becomes impossible to ignore. There comes a time when the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. Stepping back isn't an act of punishment or pride, it's an act of awareness. It means you've recognized that peace is worth more than proving a point, and self-respect is worth more than being understood by someone who refuses to listen. You can't heal in the same environment that keeps wounding you, and you can't keep giving your energy to places that only drain it. Choosing distance is not revenge, it's a declaration that your well-being matters too. People often mistake your silence and distance for coldness, but they don't realize how much strength it takes to detach peacefully. It's easy to fight, to argue, to demand change. It's much harder to walk away with grace, to accept that not everything and everyone is meant to stay. When you step back, you stop trying to control outcomes. You let go of the need to fix what isn't yours to fix. That release is where your freedom begins. It's where you stop fighting battles that only hurt your spirit and start protecting your energy like it's sacred. Because it is. Stepping back allows clarity. When you are too close to a situation, emotions can blur your vision. Love, attachment, and habit can make you justify what isn't right for you. But distance clears the fog. It helps you see people's true intentions, their effort, and the reality of how much peace or pain they bring into your life. Sometimes the truth isn't visible until you give it space to breathe. And when you step back, what's meant for you will remain, and what's not will naturally fall away. It's important to understand that stepping back doesn't make you heartless, it makes you wise. You no longer chase validation, you no longer beg for clarity, and you no longer force yourself into spaces where your presence feels heavy. You start realizing that love doesn't demand self-betrayal. Real love respects boundaries, values silence, and understands the importance of space. The wrong people will see your distance as rejection, but the right ones will understand it as respect. for them and for yourself. When you step back, you reconnect with your own energy. You begin to refill what was emptied and rebuild what was broken. You start hearing your own voice again after drowning in noise for so long. You realize that peace isn't found in being right, it's found in being free. And that freedom comes when you no longer allow others to disturb your inner balance. Stepping back is not about giving up on people, it's about choosing yourself when others fail to do so. It's about realizing that you deserve the same compassion and effort you give to others. It's a quiet form of love that whispers, I still care, but I care for me too. And that is not revenge, that is healing in motion. People don't always miss you because of who you are, they miss the way you made them feel when they were around you. Long after you've stopped speaking to someone, your words, your energy, and the peace or warmth you once gave them continue to echo in their memory. It's not your physical presence they remember. It's the emotional comfort, the sense of safety, and the feeling of being seen. You might think they miss you, but often they miss how you made them feel about themselves when they were with you. That's the invisible connection that lingers long after the bond has faded. We live in a world where most people crave emotional validation. When someone finds comfort in your presence, they begin to associate you with that feeling. You become a source of calm, inspiration, or love that they can't easily find elsewhere. But when they take that energy for granted, they don't notice its value until it's gone. The day your energy is no longer available, silence becomes louder than words. They start to realize that the peace they once felt wasn't theirs. It was a reflection of you. Your kindness, your understanding, your patience, and your presence created an emotional space that made them feel whole. This is why people often come back after losing you. Not because they suddenly recognize your worth, but because they miss how they felt when they had your energy in their life. It's easy for them to replace your presence, but not your energy. You see, true connection goes beyond attraction or attachment, it's about emotional resonance. When your energy aligns with someone's needs, it becomes irreplaceable. But once you step away, they are left facing the emptiness that your energy once filled. That's when they start to miss you. Not the image of you, but the emotional world you created for them. It's important to understand this truth so you don't fall into the trap of thinking you need to return to people who only valued how you made them feel. Your role was to show them what genuine connection feels like, not to be the endless supplier of it. Some people are meant to experience your light, not possess it. And when they miss you, it's a sign that your presence had meaning, but that doesn't mean you need to go back. Your energy is sacred. When you give it freely to others, you share a piece of your essence with them. But you must also know when to protect it. You are not responsible for the emotional emptiness others feel when you step away. That emptiness is their invitation to grow, to learn how to create their own peace. When people miss how you made them feel, it means you've touched them deeply. But your purpose is not to keep filling their voids. Your purpose is to live in truth, knowing that the way you make others feel is a reflection of your light, and your light should always begin with you. True connection is built on mutual energy, not control. It thrives in freedom, honesty, and emotional understanding, not in manipulation or dominance. When two people truly connect, they don't try to change or own each other, they simply create space for each other to grow. The foundation of real connection isn't about having power over someone. It's about being aligned with their energy, respecting their individuality, and allowing love or understanding to flow naturally. Control, on the other hand, is rooted in fear, fear of losing, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. But love that is genuine does not demand control, it invites trust. When you try to control someone, you are no longer connecting with their soul. You are connecting with your insecurity. You start to measure love in terms of obedience, validation, and attention. You think closeness means possession. But the moment you start controlling someone, you suffocate their spirit. They may stay, but their heart begins to fade. True connection never requires you to cage another person's freedom just to feel safe. Instead, it teaches you that real love exists only where both people can breathe, express, and be themselves without fear. Energy-based connection feels light, balanced, and peaceful. It doesn't drain you or demand constant reassurance. It gives you strength instead of anxiety. When someone values your energy, they respect your boundaries, your time, and your emotions. They don't pull you closer out of insecurity. They draw near because your presence adds meaning to their life. You feel seen, not used, appreciated, not controlled. That's the beauty of a connection that is rooted in mutual respect. It grows naturally, without pressure. Control disguises itself as care. It says, I just want to protect you. But what it really means is, I want to make sure you don't leave. Energy, however, says, I trust you enough to be yourself. That's what separates love from attachment. When someone's energy aligns with yours, you don't have to chase or force anything. The relationship flows in harmony because it's built on authenticity, not fear. You don't lose yourself to keep it. Instead, you become more of yourself within it. When you free yourself from the need to control, you make room for genuine connection to exist. You begin to attract people who respect your independence and honor your peace. You start recognizing that the most beautiful relationships are the ones where both people choose each other, not out of dependency, but out of shared energy and understanding. In those connections, love feels like liberation, not confinement. True connection values energy, not control, because real love isn't about owning someone, it's about experiencing them. It's about feeling safe in each other's presence without losing your individuality. The moment you stop trying to control outcomes, you begin to experience relationships that feed your soul instead of draining it. And that's when you realize that the purest form of love isn't found in power, it's found in presence.